All right, welcome back to our new episode of Two Plain Sports. Thank you guys all for watching the last video. It was obviously the Kansas game wasn't great, but on to a new week. Before we start previewing the Texas Tech game, thank you guys all for watching. Again, we really appreciate it. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, it helps us out a lot. So if you haven't already, go do so while you're listening to us, and then get back to looking at our ugly mugs. But let's get going. So we got Texas Tech back at home in Norman. I think after last week, we were just talking about it. We could be running into a situation where we this could be our first loss if our defense doesn't wake up. And hopefully that's not the case. I think versus Kansas, we just went in super unmotivated. I mean, if you guys saw the recap, we said, we just didn't feel like playing the first half. It's like we completely forgot football was happening in front of us, and they had a big wake up call at halftime. But what are you expecting out of the Sooners and I guess Tech for this weekend?
Weird week because obviously Texas Tech just fired their head coach today, so it'll be interesting to see what changes or what they're really think. I don't know what's going on there. I imagine I can't think of his name right now, but the guy at SMU right now is going to be the next head coach at Texas Tech. And I think you fired him midway through the season because something's already done. It's like a verbal agreement at this point, I would imagine, with the SMU head coach, and he will be at Texas Tech the second SMU season ends. That's a prediction for another time. But for the game coming up, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with their interim coach, what philosophy he has, how different they look. You're right. We did mention it. It's a game that if we screw around and don't play any defense again and let them control time possession, game that they could sneak away with, unfortunately, because they're capable of scoring. They scored 35 against Texas, 31 against TCU. They lost to Westphal by 3, or they beat Westphal by 3. I think they beat Westphal by the exact same score we beat them by. But they lost to TCU 52-31, and they lost by 35 to Texas. So at the end of the day, it's a game that we should not lose. It should be, whatever. It's hopefully we score 50 and they score 30. And unfortunately, right for me right now, that's how I feel like it's the best case scenario for us.
Yeah, definitely. And their interim head coach, Texas Tech's interim head coach, is their offensive coordinator, Sonny Cumby. Like you said, it'll be interesting to see what happens with their head coaching stuff at the end of the year. If it is SMU's coach and it's already agreed upon, then how is their recruiting class going to be affected? Because SMU had a decent recruiting for the 2022 class. So we'll see how things go and how things are going to change up down there in Texas. But I mean, like you said, they lost to Texas by 35. That means Bijan Robinson more
in the
than
process.
yeah, and Bijan probably had a huge game. I'm gonna look up the box score real quick, but it's probably fair to say he was a pretty big part. Yeah, so he had 18 carries.
Yeah.
18 carries, 137 yards, and then they had a backup running back go for 13 carries, 64 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So it sounds like a big hole in the defense for the Red Raiders is the running game, which luckily we have Kennedy Brooks back there who's going to be able to completely dominate them if he is given the opportunity, and hopefully that is what happens. I think we're going to see a very different team for a full game than we did versus Kansas. It seemed like in the first half, Caleb was going just looking for the deep ball instead of taking some shorter routes, and then taking the deep ball more in play action, like is more normal in the Lincoln Riley offensive system. So I think this week we're going to go from, full game. Caleb's going to play a much cleaner game. I hope he still goes for the deep ball. I don't think that anyone should discourage him from throwing him, because he's putting him in 50-50 situations with the talent you have at the wide receiver position. It's not a terrible decision. He just needs to not have the situation like last week where he throws it.
He threw a bad one last.
Yeah.
Straight up, that's what it was. It's a bad one. But at the same time, I agree 100%. You can't tell the kid not to do that, because I do love him taking shots still. And most of the time they are 50-50 good, and most of the time we've been coming down with them or drawing pass interferences or something beneficial has been happening with him. So I absolutely don't want to take that out of the offense. He threw one really bad one against Kansas, got over it, whatever, move on. this is a team. I'm going back to Texas Tech defensively. They gave up 70 to Texas and 51 to TCU, or 52 to TCU, something like that. So the deep shots should be there. Everything on our offense should be there if we play 4 quarters of good offensive football. It's a game that we should be able to win, kind of like we mentioned in the Kansas recap. Like if our offense had played 4 quarters against Kansas and we ended up winning that game 65-23, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have batted an eye. So, if we go out there against Texas Tech and we give up 30, unfortunately, like we did against TCU, no one really cares if we give 31 to TCU because we scored 52 points on offense. Let's see if it's a similar game to that.
Yeah, this is definitely I would say it's a must win because it's important to go into the bye week 9-0, and it'll be good for momentum, confidence. That way, when we come back from the bye week, we've got probably the hardest stretch.
You just said that those 3 games out of the bye week, it's the gauntlet of the Oklahoma schedule, if you will. I mean, on the road against Baylor. Baylor's not a bad football team at all. And then you're at home for Iowa State, but obviously Iowa State gives us fits. I mean, they're despite their 2 losses earlier in the season, they're kind of hitting their stride now, and they're playing some pretty damn good football. And then Oklahoma State, that's a team that, they're ranked. They were undefeated until last week. Very close call on that 4th down play. Who knows? They could have, maybe converted that and ended up winning the game. But either way, they look pretty stout. I don't think they're a very good offense, but at the same time, they've beat some good teams too. They beat Baylor. They're it's not the typical Oklahoma State that we usually just boat race.
Yeah, we've got. I mean, I would I think it's safe to say this is probably Oklahoma's biggest game so far, even more so than Texas, just because of the position we're in, how things went last week. Like, we've got to really show, the team's got to show it was just a bad week last week. This isn't what you guys are going to see every weekend. And we're prepared to make a run in the playoffs if we get the opportunity.
At this point in the season, I mean, every single one is going to be the most important. If they keep rattling off wins, if we go into the bye week, and as you it's so important to go into the bye week 9-0, give our guys 2 weeks off to, hopefully get everybody back right. And not only we keep talking defensively just because, specifically, that's been a big, at least the past couple of weeks, a big area of concern. But guys like Theo Weiss can also make the return after the bye week. And then, how much better does that offense become with, another 5-star receiver out there? It's very important to get to that bye week 9-0 and let our guys get back.
Yeah. And I'll be interested. We were talking about it right before we started recording. What is going to be happening with DJ Graham? And he got roughed up in the TCU game. It was a concussion. So I think it's probably a safe assumption that they just didn't have him play in the Kansas game because pretty much everyone saw it as it's not necessary for him to potentially get hurt in any other way. So, keep him safe this week. I mean, I think the biggest thing with our passing defense, especially because our running defense is still good. Yes, I mean, we're going to give up runs. Like the edge, we talked about it in the recap. If you want to go back and listen to what we thought, you go for it. But
against Kansas, it was
the option. Exactly. So, but if our passing defense can just be literally a little bit better, because I'm pretty sure they're starting to get down in the 80s and 90s ranked in the country before they got hurt. It was.
I also put some of that on our inability to get to a quarterback. I don't care what your defense. If you can't put any, the last 2 games we have 1 sack, and that 1 sack was in the garbage time with the second. But forget about the sack numbers. We have 6 total quarterback hurries the last 2 games, statistically 6 hurries. And I understand the defensive backs have not been great, but at the same time, if a quarterback has 45 minutes to throw the ball, typically anybody at this D1 college level is talented enough to find their guys.
Yeah, but I think it also had to do with the opponents we were going up against. TCU and Kansas had quarterbacks that are good on their feet and kind of look for their first, maybe go to their second read, and then they take off. They weren't good passing quarterbacks per se. We just made them look good because their passing offense is bad right now. But Henry Colombi, who's Texas Tech's starting quarterback right now, on the year has 34 carries for 38 yards. So we should get more pressure, essentially, because he's not, from what stats show, he's not a great quarterback that can escape the pocket and make plays on with his feet. Who knows what will happen? I think it's safe to assume we'll have a better game on the defensive line, but you're definitely right. That is probably a different thing to look at. We haven't been able to create any hurry or get any quarterback hurries, which obviously will make it harder for our cornerbacks to be able to defend and make sure that they're getting pass deflections, just getting their hand on the ball, making sure that the wide receivers aren't catching them. But I think, again, the injuries, I know people are saying like the injury excuse doesn't matter anymore. Like you have to make plays. You're on this team for a reason. You're in the position you are for a reason. You're not wrong. But the injuries that we do have are pivotal in pass rushing and in the pass defense. Jalen Redmond was probably one of the best pass rushers on the team outside of Nick Benito. And Isaiah Thomas is being put in a different position. Now he's playing nose tackle or defensive tackle rather than on the outside, opposite of Nick. So I think that was just over the last two games. So once Redmond is back, there's more confidence to shore up the middle of the line. So we'll go back to what we were seeing last year and at the beginning of this year, where a lot more quarterback hurries and a lot more assurance up front so that our DBs aren't getting run around.
I absolutely agree with you on the injuries that we have are big ones. There's no doubt about it. But at that same token, I kind of take that stance of, we have to play with what we have at the same time. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a little bit of a drop off because of the guys that we are down by or, without. But at the same time, it's you giving up 500 yards to TCU it's bad, regardless of the injuries. Getting outgained and giving up 415 yards total to Kansas, that's a game that, and no offense to Kansas, but they're horrible and they know they're horrible. That's a game that we should be able to go out there with our third and fourth stringers and still boat race them. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And you mentioned a bunch of different things too. I'm going to keep going back and pinpointing that the pass rush. In my opinion, that has to be the biggest thing to change. And hopefully it's this week. Because Texas Tech is pretty, they always have been at least a pretty, deep. Yeah. So, Texas Tech, they like to take a lot of chances, or at least they have historically. With Baker and Patty, a couple years ago, they threw the ball 88 times. They're obviously not going to throw the ball 88 times in this game, but, 35, maybe 40, like that's not out of the realm of possibility. So, it's a good opportunity for that D-line to get after it. And I truly think if that D-line plays like it did last year and we're getting after the quarterbacks, then the secondary is going to look so much better.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit it spot on, and definitely pointing out that we haven't had very many quarterback hurries is pivotal, especially in the passing game. If we're letting the DBs run out there for like 15 seconds, then they're gonna complete the pass. Like it's impossible to cover for that long. And Alex Grinch knows that. I mean, he's very self-aware of what is happening on the football field.
I think he's afraid to blitz or afraid to leave, because anytime you blitz, you leave less people in the secondary, right? Like you're shorthanded in the secondary. I don't think he has full confidence in the guys he has on the field right now. And so he plays these soft zones, and unfortunately, we're not hitting home with our four-man D-line. And what happens is they give up 12-yard curl routes or, a slant on 3rd and 9 because there's just all day.
Yeah, he kind of mentioned that in a press conference earlier today. Today's the 25th, Monday. He mentioned like he's kind of not worried, but he wants to make sure that his younger corners aren't, he's able to account for any mistakes that they could possibly make at this point due to their inexperience at this level. But you're right. I mean, he just has to have the confidence at this point. You can't change your game plan drastically. Again, you recruited these guys, they're second stringers or backups to those guys that are injured for a reason. Let them make plays. If it does become a problem where they're getting roasted on deep balls, then make your adjustment back to playing soft zones. But let's just go out there and play speed D, Alex Grinch football.
You got to at least give them a chance because, otherwise, you got to at least give them a chance, especially the thing. If that four-man pass rush was working and we're hitting home, then you can play the soft zone. It doesn't matter. It's not at the moment. As we mentioned, 1 sack and 6 hurries total the last 2 games. That's not cutting it.
No, 100%. But I think we've kind of roasted the defense for most of this video. The offense, we kind of talked about at the top of this video. Kennedy Brooks is going to be a pivotal part, I think. Texas Tech seems to have trouble with stopping the run. So hopefully Kennedy can go off for a big game. Hopefully 200 total yards, maybe like 150 on the ground or rushing, 50 passing or 50 receiving, something like that, and a couple touchdowns.
There's no doubt offensively. I mean, they give up 70 to Texas and 52 to TCU.
Yeah. So as long as they show up for all 4 quarters, again, that's been the story that Brandon's kind of mentioned all year. This team has yet to show up for a full game. We show up when necessary, if it's to come back or to make big plays. Yeah. But we haven't seen a full 4 quarters of good football from either side of the ball.
I would borderline argue against TCU. We almost got 4 quarters of offense.
That's true.
But we got about 4 quarters of offense there. The offense looked pretty damn good in that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, and being at home is probably going to be another big motivator. You can't show up flat against your home fans. So we should definitely see, hopefully, another 50 piece up, maybe 60. But I mean, this offense should look much better than it did last week against Kansas. We can't have a repeat performance there either, because I know everyone keeps pointing at the defense, but we scored no points in the first half. And whatever, we had limited possessions, but we had limited possessions against Tulane in the first half. And that was a Spencer Rattler led team who's now our quarterback. And, they're not the quarterback anymore. He's the backup now for a reason, because he just wasn't able to make the right reads or whatever. Not to like bash the guy, but when he was in that position, the offense did score every time in the first half. Limited possessions, and they were scoring. We just can't have that happen again, especially not at home.
Yeah, I agree. But at the end of the day, we did roast the defense. I feel like rightfully so, just because the past 2 weeks. I'm picking Oklahoma again this week. I think Texas Tech is too bad of a team to beat us, just because I think offensively, as you mentioned, I think we should see a lot better effort offensively this week than we did last week, and I think that'll make a huge difference. And just like that TCU game, something in that 52-31 range makes a lot of sense to me, because I do think they're going to score 30, but I just think we can score 50 on them.
Yeah, the only thing that maybe could be brought up is, I don't think either of us really know what the reason was for them firing their head coach, but at least in the NFL level and sometimes at the college level, when your head coach is canned and you have your interim head coach, the team for some reason rallies around that situation and performs at a level they aren't normally seen at. So I think Oklahoma has the ability to squash that, but they haven't shown it over the last couple of weeks. So we'll see. I don't think it should be a close game, but it probably will be. The line right now is at 20 points in favor of Oklahoma. I don't think we're going to cover that. I think it's maybe going to be like a 15, 16 point game when it's all said and done. But I mean, let's be honest. This is an Oklahoma team that right now is in a situation where the entire country doesn't believe that they're going to even win the Big 12, when we haven't lost the Big 12 in what seems like forever. So, I mean, Brandon, what do you think that we're going to cover this line?
Back-to-backs. What? Do what?
Do you think that we're covering the line right now? It's at 20 points.
17.5.
On Caesars Sportsbook, it's at 20.
I don't think we cover. 48-34 or something is what I see. I hope it's better than that, but 48-34, 49-35 type thing. Because I do think they're going to score, but I just think we're going to score more.
Yeah. No, I agree. I said the same thing, but oh man, this can either be an amazing game where we're all excited about this team again, or we're going to be super frustrated going to the bye week.
Although, and here's the deal. If the D-line shows up, if the defense itself shows up, imagine if they hold Texas Tech to 20 and we score 55 points. And we win 55-20 we'll be like, we're winning the Natty again. So, it's just, I still think we can do that too, even despite the poor defensive play we've seen recently. But, it's at some point in time that we're not going to be able to skate by playing bad defense, because if the competition's only going to get tougher and tougher.
Yeah, 100%. Last thing before we wrap it up, key players. Who do you think it's going to be? As usual, one offense, one defense.
Kennedy Brooks, and let's go somewhere on that D line again. I don't know who, but we need to see somebody just wrecked his day. Maybe how about Benito this week? Just because I can see him throwing the ball 35, 40 times. Let's have Benito wreck their day. If he gets 2 sacks when he's in the backfield and makes 5 or 6 pressures, I think it's gonna be a good game for our defense.
For sure. For me, I'm gonna stay with the defensive line, but I'm gonna go on the opposite side. Reggie Grimes. That dude's been looking really good. He gets to the quarterback super fast. He was the only one of 3 guys with a hurry last game, so he's gonna have a big game. Hopefully, a sack or 2 on the offensive side. Just to be different from what you said, because we both agree Kennedy Brooks is going to be big.
Brooks, yeah.
I'm going to pick Jaden Hazelwood to have a 2 touchdown game, maybe 3. Who knows? He seems to be Caleb's favorite red zone target. So, and we're going to get to the red zone plenty of times this week. So, I think Jaden's going to have a big game for us outside of Kennedy. But we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys for watching. As always, if you made it this far, you're awesome. Thank you for watching this entire video. Make sure to leave a comment. Let us know who you think the key player is going to be for this game. Is it going to be a D lineman? Is it going to be a corner? Someone going to step up back there? Billy Bowman still hasn't made any big plays as a freshman so far, so maybe it's his time to shine. But we'll see. I
think Billy Bowman's ready to get back in that nickel spot.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But personally, this game's going to be extremely stressful just because it seems like there's so much on the line, even though it's only game 9, not even close to championship. Well, right around the corner from championship November, but still, it seems like it's almost, win or go home situation. Anyways, thanks for watching. Leave a comment. Make sure you hit the subscribe button before you leave. Hit the like button. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.